So I've been working on designing a 3D printed button that can replace these front buttons on the steering wheel with a dual button, so up and down for volume, left, right for track. Unfortunately, getting one that fits into this space and interacts properly with everything is going to take a little bit more time. And realistically, I'm probably going to have this housing 3D scanned so that then I can modify the design in CAD and build a nice integrated solution. So for now, what I'm thinking of doing is just installing this with the standard buttons in my truck. However, in order to do the radio control portion, I do need for these buttons to have different resistances. Reason being, if you look at them, right, these were intended for the E-shift transmission. Both the left and right buttons for the front shift down. Both the left and right buttons for the back shift up. That means that these buttons are wired together and these two are the same button. There's no extra wiring or pins for that. They're wired together. So in order for you to get a separate signal that a radio control box can interpret as a separate button, what you can do is you can add a resistance in the line so that each press will have a different resistance to it, and the box can actually detect that and you can program that as a different button press. So for now, I'm just going to cut into one of these sides, right, both the front and back buttons, give them a different resistance, and that will allow me to program them differently on the control box. And that's why you see that I have this pack of resistors. This is old. I've had this for a while. Radio Shack. They're not even in business anymore. And that's a shame, because it's fantastic to be able to buy random electronic components whenever I need it without having to order online. So let's get this thing going. Another thing I'm doing is I've gone ahead and cut the wires that meet up to the cruise control stock there. I'm going to cut these off here as well, because these are going to go to my push start button. And this is actually some of the wonkiest wiring I've ever seen in a Toyota/Lexus product. So let me see if I undo this so you guys can see it. We undo this electrical tape, right, separate these two, pull this boot off, and from the factory, these are just literally wires that have been like crimped together and then wrapped in electrical tape in a pretty ghetto fashion. Like, I wouldn't say that this is a well done connection. You would think they would have used heat shrink or something. I mean, the connection itself won't really go anywhere, but right, because it's crimped, but the tape component makes it feel cheap and poorly thought out. So because I'm not going to be using these parts of it, I just cut that off, and then I'll attach that to my wires coming off my push start button. So messing with the Volkswagen push start button, I'm doing continuity testing to figure out which ones activate when I push the button, and I can see that this white one and the blue one with a white stripe are actually the ones that have continuity when you push the button, whereas the other two never have continuity to anything, and I think they're really just to cause the button to light up. So I'm going to go downstairs and put that up to the battery of my car and see what happens. Alright, so let's connect one to the positive, and then the other one can just connect to ground. Yeah, probably can jump to both terminals. Let's see. Okay, so absolutely nothing happens. Let's try pushing the button. Nope, I don't see any lighting. So if anyone's familiar with these Volkswagen push buttons, which I'm not familiar with, feel free to chime in the comments and let me know what the heck those other two wires are for, and if this thing actually does light up at any point. Seems to me that it doesn't. I don't really need it to, so I'm just going to go ahead and wire it to do its start function. I was looking around and I realized I have these neat looking little electrical connectors. So I think if I can get that to fit inside the steering wheel, I'm gonna go ahead and use that to connect my push start button into the rest of the harness. That way it doesn't have to be permanently wired into the rest of it. Alright, so let's get these pins crimped on here. So I've messed with these pins a little bit just to get familiar, and what I found is that you can basically just close them with your wire stripper, right? Kind of squeeze the ends together just to hold your wire in place, and take a crimping tool, right? And with the crimping tool you just go ahead, crimp in back and crimp a little bit further forward, and that's in place. The only thing is I don't find that the grip from this is very strong, so I'm probably gonna give it a little dab of solder afterward just to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. Alright, that's that. This one actually crimped pretty nicely, but I'll still go ahead and just dab them with solder just to make sure it's locked in place. Alright, now let's go ahead and do these other pins as well. Alright, looks like we're cooking with fire. I think that's in. I'll have to just add a little bit of electrical tape there just to block the copper. I won't strip the other one as far back, but I think that's in where it's supposed to be. It feels nice. Unfortunately, I'll have to redo some taping, but I'm gonna bring some brand new electrical tape and not use that old crappy stuff. I've soldered resistors in line with these buttons on this side, wrap this all up in some new electrical tape. So I'm going to go ahead and install this onto the steering wheel. First part of that is just to remove this back cover. And that unfortunately means the push start button as well. Okay. Now with this here, put the harness like so. This part goes up through here. And then, let's see. And we put in the front. Right, then there's some screws that need to go there. That's one. This side looks like it'll be less trouble. Alright, buttons are in. Very nice. Now let's put on the rear cover. Cables kind of mess with this a little bit, but there goes. Very cool. Okay. Go ahead and put in the push start button. Okay, that's being a bit of a pain in the butt. That's that. Now let's connect the push start into the harness. That's connected. Alright, kind of just tuck that down. These two wires are excess. Not really going to be used in my application. What I can do for them is just wrap the ends in some electrical tape just so that they don't make contact with anything. I'll leave them on. I could just cut them off, but in the event that in the future I find out that there's some way to use these to light up the button or do something, because I'm assuming they have to have a purpose, right? They wouldn't have just put these wires in there for no reason. I'm just not using this button in its Volkswagen application, so I don't know what it goes to, but I'll look at wiring harnesses later and figure that out. So it's good to leave myself the option for now at the very least. This is the ground, right? So the little spade connector is actually your ground for the horn. So that's that. Let's tuck these two in such a way that they don't really create an issue. I just go ahead and tape them together like that. Alright, that'll just kind of help keep them out of the way, and we'll tuck them up into here. And this thing is now ready electronics wise, so I can go ahead and start installing this in my truck. Alright, so here we are on my Tacoma. There's my current 3-spoke wheel. Here is the carbon fiber one that will be replacing it. So for now, because you notice that the lower trim for the airbag on this one is not yet done, I haven't put it back on, I will be continuing to use this airbag cover and the airbag that's within it up until I have that ready. And at that point I'll probably just swap the cover over. I'll be keeping this airbag in here. Quick note about safety. An airbag that's not intended to go off in your car will not go off correctly in your car. I want to say that the plugs from 98 and up Tacomas are the same as the plugs for the airbags for all the 3-spoke wheels. It will vary with some of the IS 300 and later wheels just because those were a 2-stage airbag versus a single stage. But an older 3-spoke to a 98 plus Tacoma will have the same exact plugs. That does not mean that it's the same exact inflator and airbag. It may not be designed to work in your truck. It may not be safe to go off in your truck, or whatever other Toyota you're putting this in. So just word to the wise, this does put you in harm's way if you have an accident, right? It will not perform as originally intended if you swap your airbag out. So what I do, and other people have done, is you keep the original steering wheel airbag that came with your Tacoma, you refold it to fit inside of here, you keep your original igniter, original connectors, everything. That is a possibility. However, even then, when it is your airbag inside a different cover, you don't know what differences that's going to create, right? You haven't done any validation, you haven't done any testing, you don't know that it's going to perform exactly the same. Much better for sure than probably an airbag that was never intended for your car. But just keep in mind that when you're doing this kind of stuff, there is a safety aspect. You don't know how this will perform in an accident. You know, word to the wise, you do this at your own risk. I'm not responsible for the way that this works out for you or doesn't work out for you. If you do this, you're taking your safety into your own hands. Think about that. Most people are, of course, not going to care, and they're just going to do it. Half the time they have a steering wheel with no airbag, like an Artie or a Momo or whatever, Sparco. That's all on you. And what's legal in your area, what is allowed, what's legal for the year of your vehicle too. I mean, there were older vehicles that didn't come with airbags. But I digress. That just so you're aware, there is a safety aspect. You could be in danger. I take zero responsibility for this working out or not working out for you in the end. So be safe. Whatever you choose to do, be smart, be safe, take care of yourself. I'm going to show you how this is done. That doesn't mean you have to do it. And again, it's not my fault if it doesn't work out for you. So first thing we're going to do when working with an airbag is we need to disconnect our battery and give it time to discharge the airbag circuits. So I'm going to go ahead and undo my battery right now. While I wait for the airbag circuits to discharge, I'm going to go ahead and just explain to you how you take this apart. So if you put your finger right here. There's an opening here. There's another opening here. And there's a torque screw inside each opening. And those have to come out so that this bag can come forward. Once this bag comes forward, you can undo the electrical connectors. Then there is a nut in the middle that's holding your steering wheel in place. That nut, I believe, is a 19 millimeter. You're going to undo that preferably with an impact drill, right? Much easier than with a socket, much quicker. You don't have to have something stabilizing the wheel, right? You undo that. Then the wheel is held on by splines, not just by the nut, right? That's what guarantees that it turns when you turn it, and it turns the shaft. It's going to be tight on there. It's not going to want to just come off. What you're going to do is you're going to kind of wiggle the steering wheel back and forth, side to side, and sometimes you have to smack it from one side or the other to get it to come loose. You do that, and it should come off pretty easily. It's one of the easier steering wheels to remove, in my opinion. All right, let's go ahead and put in the torque driver. All right, so that's in place. Obviously, if it's never been done before, it's a lot harder. I had rewrapped this in leather recently, well, months ago at this point, but right, screws haven't been in there for years, so it'll come out without too much difficulty. Once that's loose, do the one on the other side. Now, the way this cover is designed, it kind of retains the screw, so it is annoying to take out sometimes. It helps to have like a flathead to just pry in here and pop the screw away from the surface. Some kind of prying tool, right? Alright, in any case, airbag is loose. I'll undo the connector. So, I'll undo it first and then I'll show you. Okay, this connector here, you just go like that and you pull it and it's off. Alright, here's your airbag removed. Put it out of the way, somewhere safe. So here's the center nut that I spoke about that holds the steering wheel onto the steering shaft. You got to undo this with the impact or a socket. If you're going to use an impact, and especially in an enclosed space like an automobile interior, I heavily recommend that you wear hearing protection. It's terrible on your ears. It's absolutely unacceptable to go around doing that to yourself over and over. You'll definitely suffer hearing loss over time. So I would recommend that you wear some hearing protection. I've got these nice earmuffs over here, keep me from going deaf. This is the ground I mentioned for the horn. I've undone that. I can now undo this and then the steering wheel will come out, and then I can take this thing out because the other wheel has a plug that goes there in its place. Of course, I will actually be removing this clock spring because I have to use the clock spring from the IS, which is set up for the extra wires for the steering wheel buttons that this did not have. Alright, here comes the impact. Easy peasy. Now, just go like this, and steering wheel comes off. So here you can see why you need to use the clock spring off the IS that has more buttons. See, the Tacoma one only has 2 pins here, whereas if you look at the IS one, same exact thing, but it has multiple pins in there. And that's going to allow me to have all of the different button functions. So let's go ahead and undo this cover so I can remove this and replace it with the IS one. Alright, so let's go ahead and undo this cover. There are 5 bolts holding this on, or 5 screws. two here, then there's another one off to the side, and there's a couple more on the bottom. So let's do those first, and then these I have to kind of get up under it so I can see that I'm aligning the drill properly to remove them. They're all Phillips heads. One. Two. 3. Here comes the pain in the butt. And I lied. Looks like it was simple for once. 4. This one's being a pain. And there we have 5. And that gives us access to the bolts that hold down the clock spring. Looking at the clock spring in detail, you can see that there are 4 screws holding it in place. You undo those 4, and then this thing can come out forward, and you can replace it with the one from the IS. Alright, I've got that done. I know that that has like an electrical connection on the bottom, so I have to be careful taking it off. There's one part of it, and then let me see how I can undo the other part. Made an interesting discovery. It looks like this plug here on the 96 Tacoma is not the same as it would be for the IS clock spring, so this might actually not work out for me right now. That doesn't mean it won't work out in general. It simply means that I need to go to a junkyard and source the right connector that I'm going to need. And also, this harness plug on my 96 Tacoma only has 1 wire. That I expected. I need to run wires to match up to the other ones coming off the steering wheel for the different buttons. For now, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to set this up, because it's looking like I'm going to have to leave this clock spring in place until I go ahead and do that. So I may just plug this back in and put the steering wheel in as is, assuming that this harness connected to the same stuff. It's my steering wheel, which this should be for the horn only on this. Let me check that in the harness. So just to be clear, neither this connector nor this connector on my 96 Tacoma will plug into the IS300's clock spring, even though the IS300 clock spring does fall in place and it looks like it'll bolt down no problems. The electrical to it is different, so I have to go source these from a junkyard or eBay in order to make this work, and then I'll have to run some wiring. For now, this matches up to how stuff is wired on my other steering wheel. I'm pretty sure the horn will work, so I'm going to go ahead and put this clock spring back in place. Alright, so having put this all back together, I'm going to go ahead and bring my steering wheel. I'm going to move this connector through here. And make sure that the wheel is nice and straight as it goes in. Pop the connector into the harness. Then we can go ahead and install our airbag. But before that, I have to put the nut down. This feels pretty straight, looks pretty straight. You might have to mess with it a little bit till you're happy with it. Alright, I'm good with that. Alright, so I checked my handy dandy Haynes manual, and it says that the torque for this steering wheel nut is 26 foot-pounds. So, I'm gonna go ahead and do that with my torque wrench. It's already set. Hold the steering wheel. And there it goes. Clicked. Torque to spec. Per the Haynes manual, 26 foot-pounds. Let's go ahead and pop the airbag into place, and this thing's ready to rock. At least visually. Obviously electronics won't be ready for a while, but I'm excited just to drive around with this carbon fiber thing. Alright, so pop this thing on. Drop it into place. Let's go ahead and put in the Torx bolts, and we're good to go. So here's the completed steering wheel inside the truck. I'm pretty happy with the way that this came out. Unfortunately, the electronics are not ready yet, so I definitely have to go get this 3D scan somewhere so I can make a custom button to replace this that'll have my dual buttons in the front. I do have the push start button here. I've got to wire that in as well, but definitely have to make a trip to the junkyard so that I can get the connectors I need in order to make this work in here. But that's just a minor setback for me. I'll find that stuff and then do an updated video where I'll walk you guys through the process, and that way I can take advantage and get the steering wheel control module that's going to allow these buttons to interface with my radio, and then I'll be able to do probably just one video where I install those connectors and run the wires to that and do the setup. But in the meantime, I'm definitely going to enjoy driving this thing, and this definitely is going to look much nicer as it sits in the sun and these wrinkles start to disappear as the leather tightens up from the heat. You can use a heat gun for that as well, but I actually kind of enjoy the tactile sensation of the wrinkles, and I enjoy the process of just letting the sun do its thing. So for me, it's not really an issue. I'm going to leave it as is and let it do its thing and just enjoy it. I'm probably going to follow up with doing new leather and carbon fiber on this shift knob to match the steering wheel and kind of tie things in together here. Should be splashes of carbon fiber throughout my interior little by little as I go updating things in order to make everything very cohesive in here, but that will definitely come with time, and I'll make sure to make videos of all of those so that you guys can see the process. Now, if you guys have enjoyed this video, if you've enjoyed this video series, please feel free to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so that you're notified when I post up another video. If you have any comments, any feedback for how I can improve on this, or any questions you might have, please feel free to leave that in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching. I've got this other carbon fiber steering wheel in here that I need to finish. Now, this one also being a prototype, it's not going to be 100% perfect. Neither is the one inside the truck. I'm thinking I'll do an updated video where I get this thing finished, and then I'll do a giveaway where I will give this away to one of you, because I really don't see myself selling this until I've perfected the process and, you know, been able to really show what I can do.
So I think it would be cool to give this away to one of you viewers that have been following the series. And I'll probably do something where like you guys follow my channel and maybe get some other people to follow my channel. And then I enter you into some kind of randomized drawing, which I'll have to figure out what kind of software does that. And one of you guys can probably win this thing and have it